pleasure to introduce to all our audience Sabrina Scuri, which is our next guest. Ciao Sabrina.
Hi Silvia, ciao.
I'm super happy to have Sabrina here with me because we did together the PhD in Politecnico di Milano quite a few years ago, and then she decided to move to Madeira Island to follow her research life there. And now we get connected again here, even if we are online, but at least we are still together. Yeah, in a 30-minute conversation. Let me properly introduce you, Sabrina. Sabrina is a research fellow and integrated member of ET Madeira Interactive Technology Institute, which is part of LARSIS, that is the Associated Laboratory of Robotics and Engineering System based in Madeira, of course. And secondly, let me introduce your statement. As we said in this morning, we asked to all our speakers to send us a takeaway. And the one that Sabrina decided to share with us is step out of your comfort zone and don't be afraid to explore unknown worlds. Design is not a standalone discipline. Its real value lies at the intersection with other disciplines. And I have to say that as soon as you, Sabrina, sent the statement, the takeaway, I immediately felt the connection with our title, No Designer is an Island. In fact, while we were speaking about the theme we would like to propose for the second edition, we clearly had in mind the idea that even more in this moment of uncertainty, as we repeated tons of time, designers probably are not alone. Probably they felt alone in the last period because of we all over the world experienced some lockdown measures. So probably in that specific moment we felt alone. But probably on the other side, this extraordinary condition enforced even more the idea that designers and researchers are part of an ecosystem in which probably they could, or they should more than could, seek for other competencies, skills, meanings, of course to enlarge the horizon, the panorama in which they work, to seek new frontiers also, to explore and to seek for new fields. And I would like to talk about this with you, to talk about this aspect. And the first question I would like to tell you is, do you feel that designers should cross their disciplinary boundaries and look for creating new connection with other disciplines? Is there any added value in that, in your opinion?
Oh, yes, definitely. Actually, the first time I saw that topic, exploring new fields, expanding our horizon, I immediately thought about interdisciplinary research, or as you say, the need for crossing the boundaries between disciplines. Now, interdisciplinary research, I believe, it's always fundamental, regardless of the disciplines involved, because in a way it forces you to look at a problem, to address it. But when it comes to design, this connection with other disciplines, it's even more important, I think. As my statement says, I think that design doesn't make much sense as a standalone discipline. Why so? Because design is, first of all, a tool. It's a tool to understand human values and experiences. Put differently, we are certainly not islands, because we are more like bridges. What we do is connecting the dots. We design the connection between, for instance, technology-driven research and its real-life application. In this perspective, I think that the real value of design lies in the contribution it can bring to other disciplines and other research areas. And that's why designers not only should, but I think they must explore new areas, and most importantly, work side by side with people that have different backgrounds. Because, I mean, after all, actual innovation comes from exchange and interaction. And most importantly, Silvia, let's be honest. Exploring new areas and new words, it's way more interesting. I mean,
Definitely. We were talking about that with Matteo and Garamo this morning.
that's the whole point of the job we do. I mean, we should always try not to stand still. Human beings are made for discovering new things. That's our very nature. It's like Ulysses, you know. We should always seek to overcome our personal, professional boundaries, even if it's risky, because yes, risk is definitely a part of such an equation, and perhaps a big part of it. But I mean, even if we fail, a failure is not going to kill us, right? It makes us stronger. It teaches us something. Perhaps even just where our limits are. So it is important that even if you fail the first time, you keep trying. You can fail 2 times, 3 times, any times. I mean, it's like keep failing, it doesn't matter. A worst case scenario was going to happen. You are going to make your failure statistically significant. Fine, that's not a problem. What I'm trying to say is that it's really worth the risk, because we have so much to gain, Silvia. Exploring new areas, exploring something that is unknown, could really uncover some incredible, unforeseen pathways. Like, here, I would really love to talk about a personal experience.
Absolutely.
This is extremely meaningful to me, and is also the reason why I chose this topic in the first place. A couple of years ago, actually almost 3, I was asked to co-supervise a master's student in informatics engineering. Now, I don't want to bother you with useless details. Let's just say that she was working on one of the possible applications of a distributed ledger technology into the energy area, like blockchain, for instance, okay?
Clear.
So she needed data to feed into the system, to prototype it and make it work, and of course some help in the design of the front end, the user interface. Back then, I was working on this H2020 project. I'm actually still working on this project, Smart Island Energy System, which relates with energy and smart grid technologies. So my role was basically, on the one end, to give her access to the data from the pilot we were running on Madeira, and of course, help her with the design of the interface, because she's not a designer, and really the project was not about that. It was a huge engineering challenge, and she did an amazing job, but that's another story. So I started working on the UI, on the skin of this system, but at a certain point, I felt the need of understanding a little bit how it looks inside, how the system works, how the technology works, because especially in this case, the interface, the front end, was also a sort of translation of the logic behind it. So I started reading things about blockchain technologies, a nightmare, and how you can use those technologies in the energy industry. And while reading stuff about consensus algorithms, you can imagine, I realized that there was a lot of potential for HCI research there, in the connection between that technology, energy, and people. But really, room for investigation. So what initially seemed to be just a pure engineering challenge turned out being an extremely interesting design challenge as well. So with the help of the PI of the project and some colleagues, we designed and conducted this very small user study, not even to answer research questions, to investigate some concepts. Silvia, I must say, that is definitely the most exciting research experience I've ever had. Really. And not because of the results, yeah, we published stuff, yeah, fantastic. No, because, God, I'm proud of that work. I believe in it. I think it added something. And you know how much this means for a researcher.
Absolutely.
Be
Be proud of what you do is one of the things you look for every day.
Exactly. It's worth all the white nights.
Yeah.
And
It seems to be a black sea, and then it revealed to be the best way ever to explore a new field.
exactly. That's exactly the point, because this happened not because I took a master's student. Yeah, it started like that, fine. But it happened because I decided just to literally throw myself into something new, into something that was very different and something I was not familiar with. And I would say quite outside of my comfort zone.
Definitely.
So that's the real message. The first message for the sales. Yes, guys, please do explore new areas, interact with different disciplines and different perspectives, and don't be afraid of dealing with something you're not familiar with, because it's worth it. It's worth the risk. Sometimes the magic happens. It doesn't happen always, of course, but it does happen. And when it does, it's really mind-blowing. So yes, the first message to answer your question is we should always really follow the wind and explore new lands and explore new design cultures in a way.
Yeah, true. And you introduced a very interesting thing I would like to talk with you, because starting from new fields and starting from new islands, as we said, probably also the cultural factor is something that represents a sort of Black Sea that designers, I mean, a big part of designers are willing to explore. So do you think that also exploring other cultures can represent an added value? I mean, the added value from cultural exchange and the different point of views that can bring to you. Do you have any experience of that on that? As you are an Italian researcher that decided to go into another culture.
Yeah, and another island.
Yeah, exactly. Really, literally.
Exactly. No, first of all, I want to say that, of course, cultural exchange is fundamental, especially on like a personal level, because it might seem obvious, but it's not. It raises awareness of a lot of things, a lot of important things. It really forces you, and I'm saying that precisely because I'm a foreigner. It forces you to, in a way, reposition yourself, in the sense that it expands your horizon, it scales up everything. So it shows you where you stand and how you relate with the others. And this is important because, of course, you learn a lot of things about other cultures, but you also learn how to look at your own culture with a more critical approach. Basically, it teaches you how to look at differences, and this is a value also for our work. You look at differences with curiosity instead of fear. And this is a key driver for a better world and for a better society. And this is something that sometimes we forget, and we shouldn't. But okay, I don't want to end up talking about politics. This is not the venue, and I'm not an expert, so it's not my job. But I do want to talk about the value of cultural exchange for people and what could emerge from cultural exchange. And in this sense, I guess that Madeira is the perfect example. Madeira is full of foreigners. As we said, I am a foreigner, and I work with a lot of people that literally come from all over the world. And it has always been like that, because Madeira was placed along the trade route between Africa and the Americas. So it was a sort of strategic port for provisioning. It means that a lot of people and cultures stop by. So the Madeiran culture has been influenced by many other cultures. Actually, I think that is made of other cultures in a way. For instance, there is this traditional bread, which is literally from here. I think they don't even export it in the mainland. You have been here, and I'm sure you have tried it. The bolo do capo.
Yes.
Which is basically sweet potato bread, okay? It's very traditional because sweet potato are an important component of the local agriculture. They kind of save the island. They are not endemic. They were introduced due to the cyclical lack of cereal on the island. But what is interesting about this bread is caco, which is kind of funny in Italian. But this is the name of a stone, I think a basalt stone, on which it was traditionally cooked. Now, I've been told, but it might be a myth, that this way of cooking the bread origins from Africa and was introduced, I guess, by the slaves that were brought on the island before continuing the trip toward the Americas. And this is just an example, and perhaps the wrong one, because it relates also to slavery, but it's still an example of how the combination and sometimes the connection between cultures always generates something new. But now back, let's focus again on design.
Yeah.
I think that cultural exchange is a sort of a requirement for designers, because what we do, it's understanding people needs, okay? We study people in a way. We find solution for them. And understanding the cultural differences is fundamental, is something that we always have to take into account. Also, cultural exchange is important because I do believe that our main mission is serving people. To do so, we have to put ourselves in their shoes. And understanding their culture, experiencing their culture, it's a huge part of it, which is also the beauty of design and the beauty of our work, isn't it? And here I do have an example, actually, of how understanding the culture of the people you are designing for could really nurture the design process. But before talking about that, I really need to give you a bit of context. So, as I said, I work in the area of energy now, especially energy efficiency and renewable energy sources. Now, in terms of energy performance, Madeira is not well positioned for a bunch of reasons: technical, economic, also regulatory. I could spend hours talking about that, but I will just go off topic. So let's just say that there are actual barriers that are not that easy to overcome. But at the same time, people can always do their part. The thing is, energy consumption habits are deeply influenced by cultural factors. For example, I was reading this article recently and I discovered something interesting, that an important part of the Japanese lifestyle, the bathing routine, is very energy consuming, and I didn't know that.
Yeah.
So this is to say that our behaviors are affected not only by norms, social norms, individual norms, but also and strongly by cultural practices. Now, back to Madeira. Madeiran people have a strong sense of belonging, I've noticed, despite all contradictions. But it's okay, humans are full of contradictions.
Every country is full of contradictions, every culture, so
yeah, Italy.
you see them when you go outside, probably, when you leave the mainland, and then you realize, oh yeah,
you realize
we are full of that.
Yeah, we are all similar in a way, different and similar. But yeah, they're proud of the island, and they are very proud of their culture, which is strongly connected with the nature, with the landscape of this place. Madeira is a remote island. It's beautiful. It's wild. And Madeiran people, I believe they generally want to preserve this, to protect it, because they hold it very dear. It's part of them. It's their identity. I started talking about energy because in, I think, 2013, some colleagues of mine did this project, which is called, it's nice from Fanal. I can tell you what is behind this name, but later, because first I need to explain the project. Basically, the aim of this project was to test a different approach in the design of eco-feedback technologies, which are those technologies that provide you with feedback about your energy-related habits, with the goal of reducing your environmental impact. So basically, an eco-feedback system tells you how much energy you consume, when, how, why. So ideally, you understand your behaviors and you try to change them. Now, the idea behind this project was, instead of showing energy-related data using numbers and graphs, let's use elements of the local landscape. And specifically, they decided to use the Laurisilva forest, which is the endemic laurel forest. Laurisilva is a symbol of the island. I think it's a UNESCO Natural World Heritage Site. And let's say it's deeply linked with several local traditions. So it's in a way in the DNA of the island and its inhabitants. So the idea was...
It's a sort of engaging elements for the people that will be, using this system, I can imagine.
Exactly. But most importantly, the idea was, I'm not trying to tell you this is the way you use energy. Or rather, yes, that's the goal, but I will do that by showing you the potential impact that your habits have on such a landscape, something that represents you. So they deployed this system for more than a month with a bunch of families. Each family had this tablet connected with their energy meter, and based on the data, they could see the potential impact of their habits on the Laurisilva.
Yeah.
This study, in a way, demonstrated that leveraging the, let's say, emotional connection that we have with elements of our culture could be very effective in raising awareness of our energy consumption. And most importantly, they have noticed that people kept interacting with the system. And this is important because traditional eco-feedback technologies are not very effective in the long term because people just lose interest. While trying to link what we do with our culture appear to be really potentially more effective in fostering behavior change, even without showing quantitative data, which is something that the art scientists really love. So
yeah,
this, I think it's a good example of how understanding the culture of the people we are designing for could inform the design process, definitely. So it is something that we should always take into account.
Absolutely, understanding the culture of the person you have in front also can be the engaging trigger that you can find in order to make, as you said, a project that was mainly related to data. So something that if you're not familiar with, it takes a lot of time to get familiar with that. But if you find out the trigger to make it somehow emotionally bonded to you, probably is also the key that can be applied to other projects to say that connected with other cultures, understanding that in the world there are other habits, cultures, and ways of thinking is a sort of key to lever a better project and a more effective one.
That's absolutely to everything, because if there is something we care about, it's culture, is our culture. So it's always a driver to add meaning to our design.
Yeah, absolutely. And you were talking about also quantitative and qualitative data and stuff, and that introduces another point that, of course, we have a previous discussion together, and we touched a point that was really, really interesting. That was the relationship between design and hard sciences.
Yes.
So that's also another relationship that I think in this era of uncertainty and in this future that now opens up, probably we should rethink, or we already started to rethink and perceive in a different way. And what I would like to discuss with you is that if in your experience, what are the challenges and the opportunities that designers face while approaching other disciplines, and in particular while designers approach hard sciences? Even more because in your job, you face every day some other hard sciences.
Yeah, I'm surrounded by art science. No, I would say that, of course, approaching other disciplines, any kind of discipline, it's not always easy. It's quite hard indeed, because it's like being among people that speak a different languages, and no one can really understand the other. In such a situation, it's very hard to express your opinion, to explain yourself. It can get very frustrating, especially when you deal with the art sciences, because Designers are often seen as the guys that choose the color palette. I always make this joke with the design students when I have a chance to talk with them. Of course, it's a bit of a stereotype, but in a way, it's also true. When you say hello, I'm a designer, people look at you like, oh, poor thing, just sit in the corner and play with colors.
Exotic
Fine.
bird.
Exactly. It's not always like that, of course, and things are changing, but still, sometimes this happens. And even worse, design itself is often misunderstood with furniture and fashion. But those are some of the many possible output of design. What design is, I think, is the process that leads you to those output. A process that starts from what is human. I know I'm repeating myself, but I really want to stress this aspect because I think it's important, especially in times like the one we're living. Because right now we should really take a step backward and start in a way from scratch, understanding human problems, genuine problems, in order to find actual solution for a better world. And this is the actual contribution that our community can bring. But we have to put our knowledge at the service of other disciplines. That's the only way we can show that this is our potential, this is what we do, and sometimes also take our rightful place in the scientific community. But the best way to do so, I think, is by working side by side with the art sciences. It's like taking them throughout the design process. Take the journey together instead of just showing up back with the output. Because otherwise, I kind of see why they think we are that output.
Yeah.
This is the very first and fundamental step to start a constructive dialogue between design and art sciences. And constructive for everyone, also and especially for us sometimes, because a fantastic design concept is still a concept. And sometimes it's a useless one when you are not sure that that thing is going to work from a technical point of view, it's not feasible from an economic point of view, a regulatory point of view. And that's why this dialogue between soft and art sciences is so crucial. Let me just open a small parenthesis here, also thinking about
in our last 2 minutes, of course.
Yeah, almost done. Thinking about the previous discussion, I'm not saying that technology boundaries should always mark the limits of how far we can go. But the thing is that sometimes we have to consider them because we are so focused on the future that often we forget about the present. And working with the art sciences help us keeping our feet rooted on the ground. And we need that sometimes. But here I want to just tell you my personal experience very quickly. I can describe my first 6 months here with 2 words. Yeah. Imposter syndrome, I swear. I couldn't understand my role. I couldn't understand these people. At Politecnico, I used to work with designers, so people that speak my language. And I'm not talking about Italian, I'm talking about the language of design. Then I moved here and I found myself surrounded by people talking about harmonic distortion, best control algorithm. I got lost, Silvia. I started reading stuff, struggling to understand what they were talking about, and I failed. Talking about failures, I failed miserably. At a certain point, I thought, okay, I just don't belong here. I don't fit in. I was expecting someone to tell me, sorry, Sabrina, we made a mistake, you are fired. But then we started recruiting people. We started recruiting participants, and we added that tiny missing piece. And that's when I realized that I was not supposed to learn and master their language, but to bring my own into the conversation.
Yeah, also in order to be part of that, in order to tune on the two languages and try to reach, again, with the same comparison we did, to reach new islands and new lands, a new project. That's very clear. I'm sorry, we finished our time, and I mean, I could stay here talking with you really, really so many minutes more. But we need to close, and thank you very much, Sabrina, for sharing with us your experience, your point of view, and everything, and for sharing with me these 30 minutes of conversation. Thank you very, very much.
Thank you very much. Bye.
Goodbye, Sabrina.